Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to NEWSROOM. I'm your host Omar Khalid. But today is the 18th of October 2023, and these are the stories that we'll try to highlight, decipher, and understand during the course of the show. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, with, of course, the third BRI forum. That was held in Beijing, two-day forum yesterday and today. Our Prime Minister, Mr. Omar Kakker, addressed the auspicious ceremony that included representatives of more than 120 countries. Our Prime Minister highlighted many important issues concerning, of course, the people of the world, the people of Pakistan. He also highlighted the relationship that exists between Pakistan and China, and he also lauded Xi Jinping for the BRI and the 10 years of the BRI, and of course what we are looking forward to in the next phase of the BRI and the China-Pakistan economic corridor as well. He met with many important leaders, whether it be the Kenyan Prime Minister, whether it be Antonio Guterres, who is the United Nations Secretary General. He also met with the Kazakhstan's leader, and he also met with other important leaders, including the Chinese leader as well. And of course, important interactions happened between the two sides on different levels, on different fora, and of course the memoranda and agreements were also signed on the occasion between Pakistan and China. This is a very important visit for Pakistan and for the relations between Pakistan and China, as has been seen during the course of the visit of our caretaker Prime Minister to our brotherly country. This is going to be our first segment, ladies and gentlemen. Our second segment concerns Palestine and of course the atrocities that continue by Israel on the hapless people, especially those who are encircled, the 2.3 to 2.4 million people who are encircled in Gaza. The hospital that was bombarded by Israel has caused 500 plus deaths and scores of injured. The current rate, if we look at the number of people killed in Gaza, has now risen to 3,300, with more than 13,000 injured since the 7th of October in the occupied West Bank. 61 Palestinians killed, more than 1,250 injured in the occupied West Bank. Of course, the other was Gaza. The fact remains that the world should have come together as one by now, should have openly sided with the Palestinians. But here, in fact, we see a deviation from the norm. We see a polarization in the world as far as how to react on this very important human rights issue is concerned. Pakistan, of course, is siding with Palestine. Pakistan is also sending aid to Palestine, but the fact is that Israel is also not allowing aid to enter the Palestinian area. Many countries have also asked for this. On the same note, the US President Biden has also met with the Israeli leader. What kind of talks are happening? We don't know, but of course there will be a statement that will emanate from that side. But of course these are developments that are also happening, and other developments in the Arab world are also happening. Let's hope that the OIC gets up and tries to take some kind of a solid action, action-backed move as far as this issue is concerned, because it is high time that something concrete was done as far as finding a solution to this issue is concerned. This is our second story, ladies and gentlemen. Then we are going to talk about other important stories like Pakistan's successful test of Ababil weapon system. This is very important as well as far as Pakistan's security apparatus is concerned, Pakistan's defense system is concerned. The test is aimed at performance evaluation of weapons, and the missile system aims at strengthening our deterrence. Of course, it is very important, the current geopolitical and geostrategic context that we are seeing in our region in particular. Then the 16th anniversary of Karsas tragedy is today as well. Bilawal Bhutto Zardari also addressed a ceremony on the occasion. Over 180 people were martyred in this attack that happened in 2007. This happened 2 months before Benazir Bhutto was assassinated in Liaquat Bagh. Bilawal Bhutto also paid homage to the martyrs of the Karsas tragedy. This and such tragedies are a brutal reminder of the fact that we need to come out of and we need to come out of the environment of terrorism. We need to come out of an environment where such elements exist or coexist, and we need to thwart all such elements as our defense forces are currently doing. Our last story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns X, or Twitter if you might. The fact is that in some countries, Elon Musk has said that he's going to charge an annual fee of $1, although it doesn't seem much, but it's a fee nevertheless, and it means that it can be increased in the coming years or so. Nothing is free, nothing in life is free. This is the quote that people say, and now X or Twitter is proving that. This is going to be our last story. Let's begin with our first, and that concerns the visit of our caretaker Prime Minister Kakker to the People's Republic of China. He addressed the Third Belt and Road Forum. There were very important topics that he talked about, addressed, highlighted, talked about Pakistan-China friendship. He also met with very important leaders, including the Chinese leader as well, and Chinese Premier as well, and important talks, important memoranda and agreements were also signed between the two countries. This was not the only leader that he met. He also met with other important world leaders and Secretary General of the United Nations. To talk about that and more, we've been joined by two guests. One joins us from Beijing, and the other guest, of course, joins us in the studio. In Beijing, we've been joined by Yonfel Zhao. He's a CGTN reporter. Thank you very much to have joined us, and welcome to my show. Our second guest in the studio is Ali Salman. He's an economist. Ali, welcome to our show. I'm sure that you'll try to decipher the economic aspect of this visit, as well as the cooperation between both our countries under the ambit of the CPEC.
Thank you, Omar, for having me.
No, the pleasure is all mine. Let's begin with you, Yonfel. I hope you can hear me properly.
Yep. Thank you for having me.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, Yonfel, I'd like to understand President Xi Jinping, when he addressed the inaugural session of the Third Belt and Road Forum, he talked about 8 major steps for the Belt and Road cooperation. How important do you feel those 8 steps are? I'd like you to answer that and give us more details as far as those 8 steps are concerned.
Well, I think the general speech that President Xi has delivered on Wednesday morning really presented the past and present and the future. So the logic flows from the beginning, how the initiative was originally initiated. It's really got inspired from the Asian Silk Road. And then he talked about how the past decade, since the initiative of that, the birth of the initiative a decade ago, how it got developed. You asked about the 8 measurements, specific details. That is the part that President Xi has elaborated at the very last segment of his speech. And he basically given out a vision for how the future development of the Belt and Road Initiative could further go. So basically the 8 measures that he mentioned are surrounded by boosting connectivity among countries, like encourage free trade among different countries, and promote green development. By green development, it means eco-friendly development, and also promote technical innovation and people-to-people exchanges. And all of these ideas comes down between the people, from the leaders' perspective. They want to build and to improve international cooperation mechanism on the Belt and Road Initiative.
All right, wonderful. I'd also like to understand something, Yonfel. You know, when our Premier took to the stage and talked to the August gathering, he talked about the concept of Tiansha, which means land under heaven. How important is and how related is the concept of Tiansha with the Belt and Road Initiative?
Well, I think it's important to basically promote people-to-people exchanges under the initiative, and then over here right now at the media center over here you can see we also basically got a chance to talk with people from around the world, journalists especially around the world, and there are journalists who are from Pakistan. I talked to a journalist from Pakistan just now, and I think the communication is it's quite friendly as always. That really tells the relationship between the two countries. So certainly this is something that the people-to-people exchange is one of the foundations of the initiative.
Yonfel, you know, President Xi Jinping, when he addressed the ceremony, also talked about the importance of BRI to promote international trade. Could you give certain examples of how that has proven to be conducive, lucrative, not only for China, but for all the countries concerned?
Okay, so basically the general idea that President Xi is trying to persuade is that now China has hopped on the journey of modernization, and then this is a lesson that China has learned from its past development. So it's a series of concepts, but China doesn't want to force its way of development to other countries. So, but certainly this is a good strategy for the countries to share its path towards modernization. So through the Belt and Road Initiative, and that could be one of the biggest strategies that can, share China's wisdom, share China's strategies to help other countries, especially those developing countries who are participating countries of the BRI, to find out their unique path towards modernization. How to do that is through the high quality development of the initiative. So you asked about the details. You asked about the project. So certainly, also in his speech, he mentioned about economic corridors. We know CPEC has been very popular among China and Pakistan. He mentioned about infrastructure connectivity. He also mentioned about cultural exchanges. And one specific case that President Xi has mentioned in his speech is that during the COVID pandemic, the BRI connectivity has really become a tunnel for saving lives, because exchanging protective gear as well as exchanging medical services based on the agreement among countries, and that is life-saving.
That is true, and in fact, the Belt and Road Initiative is a wonderful opportunity. As our caretaker Prime Minister Kakker Saab said, this whole project is a revolutionary one and a new vision. And of course, he talked about the new era of BRI that is going to be that pave a new roadmap for all the countries involved in this mega project. Kindly stay online with us, Yonfel. We've also got an economist in the studios here with us. Ali, thank you very much. You were very patient while we both were talking with the Chinese side. How important is this visit in your point of view of Mr. Kakker to China? We've had many a visit in the past as well. But now that the second phase of CPEC is slowly gaining momentum, and of course our Premier, while he was addressing this August ceremony, called the second phase a corridor of growth, equal opportunity provider as well. What should we look forward to now in this second phase of CPEC, and how important will be Chinese-Pakistan cooperation in the next months and years under the second phase of CPEC?
Right now, I think this visit is very timely and very important to reiterate some of the commitments which both countries have made under CPEC during the phase 1 as well as phase 2. Now, just to put the perspective, CPEC is the most important project in terms of level of investment in the BRI, globally speaking. And this is China's most significant investment, which is going on. Largely we have completed the infrastructure projects, but the phase 2, as you rightly said, it's about industrial cooperation. And there, I think we need much more work on Pakistan side than on China's side. Such visits does provide an opportunity for both sides to engage and to look at the
how things are happening, how things are moving along.
And how things are moving along. And so I hope that there will be a discussion and we'll get more details in coming days at what improvements in the framework has been discussed. But one thing is very important is that the investment regime has to be looked at in the context of the trade environment. So since 2007, as you know, Pakistan and China are in a free trade agreement, which was revised, and since 2020 we are under an enhanced FTA, which covers about 8,000 tariff lines, which is a significant opportunity for Pakistan.
Is Pakistan taking proper advantage of this?
Not enough. If you quantify this, the access which Pakistan has to the Chinese market, Chinese total imports from the world is about $2.7 trillion. But in the markets in which Pakistan is operating, it's about $700 or $800 billion. So out of that total basket, Pakistan total export is about $3.5 billion, which is not even 1%, maybe about 5.5%. So from instead of talking about trade diversion, that is, we're not talking about just diverting a trade to US to China, from US to China, but we want to create more opportunities within Pakistan, enhancing the productive capacity. For instance, in the area of livestock, in the areas of vegetable farming, agro-processing is a high priority area. Now there we lack significant capacity at the firm level, at the industry level, and also since our the agriculture sector mostly is unorganized and works at a very small scale, we are not able to mechanize and we are not able to meet the demand which Chinese
but
market has.
maybe we could learn from the Chinese side on how to modernize our agriculture sector. We've seen the floods that happened in 2022, and I think it's time for our agriculture sector to also be at par so that it can withstand effects.
Actually, there have been a couple of good projects already going on with both countries' cooperation. One project I would like to mention is the production of red chilies in Sindh. With the experts of Chinese coming in here, and of course on Pakistani soil, Pakistani farmers were trained on how to actually produce red chilies according to the Chinese market, and produce them according to the quality standards which is needed for a global market. You see, that is something which generally we lack, and similar cooperation is needed, I believe, in processing of livestock. And other products like paper, chemicals, pharmaceuticals. China does have demand, and they are open to exporting from Pakistan, but we do not have enough productive capacity to meet that demand.
All right, so we need to enhance our productive capacity in order to meet the demands and also, strengthen ourselves economically in the bargain. Coming back to you, Yonfel, I'd like to, understand two different perspectives. The first is on the relationship between Pakistan and China. You yourself have met Pakistani journalists. You said that while we were talking a couple of minutes back. At the same time, I'd like to understand what the Chinese people think of the Pakistani side. And during this Belt and Road Forum that was held, the interactions that were held between the Pakistani and Chinese side, the agreements that were also signed, how effective do you feel they are going to be to further strengthen this cooperation between our two brotherly and friendly countries?
Certainly, in China, there's a saying, "Batie." It's called, this is how Chinese people say Pakistan people. It's translated in English is the iron friendship. So certainly speaking of Pakistan, this is most of Chinese people will realize that this is a very quite close relationship. Now, under the Belt and Road Initiative, we talked about CPAC. I just want to echo my colleague over there. I have a status. A figure shows that the Chinese embassy in Pakistan have offered a data showing that by 2022, CPAC has brought $25.4 billion US direct investment, and that's about 236,000 jobs for Pakistan, but not just for the Pakistan's infrastructure, because the Belt and Road is not just a one-way infrastructure connectivity. It's mutually beneficial. Now, at the beginning, because we're marking the 10 years anniversary of the BRI, so at the beginning, it's just a concept. So people's understanding of it is a little bit superficial. Connectivity of infrastructure. Yes, it's a connectivity of infrastructure, but at the same time, the participating countries are building on the ideas, just as the red chili example that my colleagues have mentioned. I never heard of that, but certainly this is something, an outcome of different levels of organizations, ministerial levels, where people-to-people exchanges can boost this kind of opportunity exchanges. You asked about the leaders gathering here in Beijing. My understanding is that your caretaker Prime Minister Omar Kakar has already met with the Chinese Premier Li Qiang, as well as Mr. Li Xi. He's the member of the Standing Committee of Political Bureau of CPC Central Committee. And certainly they're also discussing further details, not only just celebrating the past friendship, but also discussing potential fields of cooperation in the future.
All right, in potential fields of cooperation, our caretaker Prime Minister talked about the IT sector, science and technology sector, and of course the future of CPAC as being a green corridor with the modernization in the agricultural sector, environmental protection and green development. What I'd also like to understand from you is what our caretaker Prime Minister said during his address. He talked about Excellency Xi Jinping, and he said he is creating a global community with a shared vision. How important is this whole concept of a global community with a shared vision when you look at all the different geostrategic and geopolitical events that are happening across the world?
I think that's a very interesting question. That's a very good question, because really in the speech that President Xi has delivered on Wednesday morning, he elaborated a lot. He spent so much time to explain the philosophy behind the Belt and Road Initiative. He's really like going back and forth and coming back to this philosophy, is that the world needs to be good. If the world is good, then China can be good. If China is good, then the world is good. So it's a coexistence that really comes from the very, very basic knowledge of the Chinese ideology, and basically also for a lot of the Asian countries' ideology as well. So he mentioned, President Xi mentioned that the Belt and Road Initiative was inspired by the Asian Silk Road. The way how the Asian Silk Road, the story of Asian Silk Road, can be carried on for so long time, for thousands of years, simply because of its idea that against war, that is against confrontation of ideologies. He cited the current situation that the world is facing, so many different views, and there's also protectionism, rising protectionism, as well as Cold War mentality existing. Now, at this time, it is more important to seek the common ground, and with dialogue and communication to resolve disputes, and all the way to find the common ground and seeking for cooperation, so that really come down to the idea of win-win.
That is so true. And this is, of course, a win-win situation for all the partners concerned, the BRI marking 10 years, and definitely we are looking forward to the next 10 as being even more constructive as far as cooperation between different countries, including between Pakistan and China is concerned. Thank you very much, Yonfel, Zhao, to have joined us all the way from Beijing. Hope to hear from you very soon as well, as far as all these events that are happening under the ambit of the BRI. Thank you very much to have joined us.
Thank you.
Let's come to our guest in the studios. Ali, you've heard what the Chinese journalist had to say. When you look at the whole prospect of the BRI in total, it is catered towards development. It's catered towards joining of different countries, of different nations together for constructing something, instead of the opposite that is happening in different parts of the world, unfortunately. Can the world kind of take on this this rollover of the BRI and maybe become more constructive as a whole, or do you feel this balance of destructive and constructive is going to go on? And if it does, is it going to affect projects like the BRI in the coming years?
No, I think I agree that the importance of the infrastructure is not the infrastructure per se, but also what it brings. It brings people together, it brings economies together, it brings firms and businesses together. There's an old saying in the economic history, as we say, that if we don't let goods cross borders, then armies will. Right? So imagine, you're going to talk about Palestine a little bit later. Imagine if there is a trade relationship there, then certainly I think there will be no war. Right? So maybe I'm being simplistic here, but at least it helps.
But maybe it's better to be simplistic than to be complex.
That's right. So I think in that same context, BRI and CPEC is a good example of connectivity. But that's a platform, and that's not the complete sort of economic growth model. Which we need to build on. So if we just leave the building to the pillars and do not build anything on it, then obviously the whole investment can be lost.
Exactly, like a pile of cards.
And exactly. So that is, I think, we need to ask questions ourselves. We need to increase the expertise within economy, within our academia, within our think tanks. That how do we connect, how do we, for instance, which kind of expertise can we bring from China? I gave you one example. There are hundreds of other examples which can be given. And how do we then develop the production, the productive capacity? China has done so well in terms of technology acquisition, but we have not. So what we can learn? There was a time, just 50 years ago, when the opposite was true, when Chinese engineers were coming to Pakistan and learning their engineering from Lahore.
The Republic of Korea has taken a 5-year plan and has really built on it, and look at where it is now.
That's right. So I think that this cooperation is necessary. At the same time, I think we need to also unpack some of the complexities in the infrastructure. For instance, the power, the project which you mentioned are very important. There was a time when we were facing power shortages.
Of course.
Now we have a problem with surplus. We're a very unique country where shortage was a problem and now surplus is a problem.
But there are challenges that have also been mentioned by our caretaker Prime Minister. He talked about the pandemic, the inequalities, the debt burden, food and energy crisis, climate change, digital divide. So many challenges that we have been facing and continue to face. How can Pakistan move forward in an environment where at the same time we can cater to these challenges and on the parallel we can also construct ourselves economically?
Well, I think important thing is that we need to change the orientation of our nation from geostrategic to geo-economics.
But that is what the aim has been, hasn't it?
There has been the aim, but I think a lot more needs to be done. We need changes in the investment climate. We need the trade policy to be oriented according to the economic interest. Right? I remember when the CPEC was launched, during the previous tenure of PMLN, it was clearly argued very positively that CPEC is not going to be limited just for Pakistan and China. It's going to be a South Asia level. It's going to open doors. But look what we have done. So we have led the security paradigm to create kind of obstruction in the expansion of CPEC potential, which lies in the in opening the borders with India, for instance. So imagine we are in the middle of these two world giants in terms of economic growth and economic market size.
But therein lies a dilemma, to be very fair, because Ali, that discussion is a very long one, because then there's also the geostrategic and the geopolitical issues that come in between, and the insistence by India to not talk on issues that concern.
Let me just slightly on a point of disagreement, but I think this is where we are discussing that world over these differences are there. For instance, imagine China and Taiwan. So they are always in the disagreement. China does not recognize Taiwan as a country. This whole issue of recognition, but still, these two countries have a heavy trade and investment relationship. That does not stop. So China and India has border disputes. That does not stop them from doing business.
But we have one or two very important core issues that we need to deal with before we can move on to that environment. Thank you, Ali Salman. We could have talked much more, and there are so many things to talk just on the matter of economy and Pakistan's economy, whether it be related to the BRI or not, and we'll inshallah get that time to do. Thank you very much, Ali, to have joined us. Let's come to our second segment, and that concerns Palestine, that concerns the Al-Ahli hospital in Gaza city that was bombed, resulting in 500 plus casualties. How more inhumane can you get? More in the following report.
A massive blast rocked a Gaza city hospital packed with wounded and other Palestinians seeking shelter, killing at least 500 people. The death toll is by far the highest of any single incident in Gaza during the current violence. The number of people killed in Gaza has now risen to 3,300, with more than 13,000 injured. The bloodshed at the Al-Ahli Al-Arabi hospital in Gaza has become a lightning rod for anger across the region. Pakistan has strongly condemned the Israeli attack on a hospital in Gaza, resulting in hundreds of casualties. Pakistani Prime Minister said that it is a grave violation of international law and humanitarian law. Israel must be held accountable for its war crimes as it continues its unrelenting bombardment and siege of Gaza that has resulted in death, destruction and displacement. Foreign Office spokesperson Mumtaz Zahra Baloch said that attacking a hospital where civilians were seeking shelter and emergency treatment is inhumane and indefensible. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau termed it horrific and absolutely unacceptable. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres said he was horrified by the deaths as hospitals and medical personnel are protected under the international humanitarian law. President Joe Biden has arrived in Israel as Middle East turmoil grows following the hospital explosion in Gaza, but a planned four-way summit in Jordan has been postponed. U.S. President Joe Biden expressed outrage and deep sadness by the strike and loss of life. The indiscriminate targeting of the civilian population and facilities is a grave violation of international law and constitutes war crimes. Israel spent decades testing huge amounts of tools and technologies on Palestinians to control them.
To discuss more on that, we've been joined by Dr. Salma Malik. She's an expert in foreign affairs. Dr. Salma, thank you very much to have joined us. It had been some time that we hadn't discussed important issues on this very show. So welcome back to our show. Salma, without any further ado, let me just go to the crux of it. Al-Ahli Hospital. you bomb a hospital, that results in the 500 plus deaths and more than 1,000 injuries. The reaction has been swift, whether it be from the European Union's chief Ursula von der Leyen, who says there is no excuse for hitting a hospital full of civilians, but whether it be from the Pakistani side, whether it be from the OIC as well, where a special meeting is also being held, where our foreign minister is present as well. Do you feel Israel made the wrong move by attacking this hospital, or do you feel for them it is business as usual?
Thank you so much, Omar, for having me in your show. And it's always an absolute pleasure and honor to be a participant here. I would unfortunately take your second point as more valid. It's business as usual for Israel, and also it's testing the waters as to how deep the waters would go. There is immense condemnation, as you have rightly pointed out, but is the world going beyond the condemnation? That is also a question, because we can condemn a wrongful act, hospitals, schools, religious places, all of these aspects are considered to be sanctuaries, not to be attacked, non combatant, safe zones, which are never to be targeted in a classic war. And here we have the Israelis doing exactly what they wanted to do. And in that process, killing women, children, older people, the sick, the dying, and so many, and of course, the caregivers, the doctors, in everyone, which means that they don't neither they respect human rights, nor do they respect any norms of international community or international standards where these sanctuaries should be sanctified and not attacked. And they also know that they can get away with it. So they feel that this is a business as usual. They'll do it. There would be a couple of days condemnation, and then they can raise the war ante a notch further. They can do further violations. They can now kill 1,000 people. They can attack children in school, so many other things, and they very well know that they have that type of support available to them, that no one is going to turn around or sanction them or condemn them or actually take positive action against them. So they have a field day.
Dr. Salma, with due respect to the Jewish community or any other community, the fact is that the Jewish community in Israel and elsewhere have been since the end of the Second World War talking about the atrocities that they were subjected to, and they are exactly doing the same to the Palestinians, if not worse. They are doing exactly the same to the Palestinians.
Absolutely.
Haven't they learned from what happened? I'd like to understand, shouldn't this have been a lesson learned for them, what happened after the Second World War, what they claim to date as to the atrocities that were committed on them, and they are doing exactly more or less the same atrocities on civilians in Palestine. Doesn't it seem very strange to you as a human being?
The ghettoization, kind of putting them, stereotyping them, putting them, violating their everyday rights, the sanctity of the Palestinians, everything. I absolutely agree with you. This is a mirror image of what had happened to the Jewish community in Germany under the Nazi rule. And one, on a humanitarian grounds, would have expected them to come out as a very humane people who would understand what they have gone through, the humiliation they have been subjected to, and they would have respected human rights, humankind far better than anything else. And to be very honest, many of the Muslim countries, including Pakistan, were much more empathetic to the Jewish community and the Israelis. Israel comes later, but to the Jewish community who were leaving Europe and taking any type of security or protection in countries wherever they would find them. And if we go back in Pakistan's history, we had a huge Jewish community taking asylum in Pakistan. Some of them stayed back and remained here till the 1980s. And many of them traveled further to Israel or to the Arab world and formed Israel. It shouldn't classically be the Muslims of this area who should be targeted by the Israelis or the Jewish community, but they're doing exactly that. And this is actually a mind-boggling psychological analysis. A psychologist or a psychiatrist can tell us better as to what type of mindset is this. But I guess it's also the fact that when you empower the disempowered, they feel that they have a right, they get into a very strong self preservation mode, and they try to subjugate the people, and they try to impose their power, however ugly that power would be, on the same people who least deserve this kind of a treatment. Instead of making Palestine and Israel a place of interfaith harmony and interfaith living, they have actually made it a hell for people who were the indigenous population of this area. And today's story says something very different. People hardly know that this was a Palestinian land. People actually, in another generation's time, people would uh, have a different narrative where they would say that there are Palestinians living in Israel rather than the
True. Dr. Salman,
Israelis living in.
let's talk the language of narratives. It is this narrative building by the West that has cost, that it is going to cost and has also cost lives. Look at the 6-year-old Palestinian American who was killed just because of a narrative building that has been propagated to such an extent in the West that the whole attitude of what Palestine stands for and what Palestinians are has completely changed in the minds of many of the Westerners. Power, you said, at which cost? At the cost of human lives? What is the use of such power? But then, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, as people say. How can we curb this hunger for power that Israel has? What can be done?
Um, where I absolutely agree with you, let's have a slightly different take on this. And one aspect is that there are Jewish communities within the Western world who are also condemning what is happening in Israel.
Agreed?
So
Agreed?
here I self contradict myself. Having said that, when we look at what exactly is happening in Israel, one name that we cannot ignore is Netanyahu and the likes of him, who want to power maximize because they have very little to deliver when it comes to governance at the home front. And the verdict is still out when it comes to be, because there's a lot of grayness to this entire sudden eruption, the Hamas doing the attacks. What would the Hamas get out of doing those attacks? Who benefits more by the Hamas attacks is also a question, and we're really not going into that. We are looking at the everyday development and then how the narrative is getting generated. But when we talk about power maximization, when you get into this escalatory ladder, there is no end to power maximization. Nothing is enough. And it becomes an absolute corruption. So it becomes a death in itself. And today they will be targeting the Palestinians. Tomorrow they might go in another direction. But also, is there a power check? Yes, there is a power check. And that power check should have happened when the entire Muslim community, the Ummah as we fondly refer to, would have actually laid down very serious barriers and their concerns through these long decades as to how all this was happening. And they should have done some effort to protect the Palestinian rights. But the entire Ummah was very complacent to the fact that, okay, if Palestine is being taken away, it's eroding piece by piece, at least it's not burning their house. Many of our Muslim brethren countries, they weren't even very open to having Palestinians go to their countries as asylum seekers or refugees, conflict affectees. They would push them out. So, to be very honest, the Muslim Ummah has also just lip sunk, and they haven't gone beyond mere condemnation. After the last Arab Israel war, in which again we have seen how the Muslim world played one against the other, and how the creation of Israel actually happened in the 1940s, is also a very classic story of the divided house that the Muslim Ummah has. So we can't really and because the Israelis know that, the Jewish lobby knows that, the Western powers know that, so they exploit them to the hilt, and that also contributes to the power maximization that we see happening now. And its expression can be as naked, it can be as swear as anything, and they can get away with the extreme violations.
Last question, very short answer. We're a bit short of time, Dr. Salma. What a pity. I'll definitely try to get you on board for a longer segment. But the fact remains that humanitarian aid is a necessity when it comes to Palestine. Pakistan has also sent that, other countries are sending, but they are not getting, the Palestinians are not getting access to that humanitarian aid. Who can, intervene so that at least the Palestinians get the food and water?
My very short and simple answer is UN. The UN
Okay.
has to do its necessary role. It cannot do what it did in 1994 genocide of Congo, where the Hutus and the Tutsis were killing, and the UN was in a snooze mode. They really have to intervene and ask the aggressor to stop, and also provide humanitarian aid to the belligerent people, and to the beleaguered people. And unless and until the UN intervenes, nothing is going to work properly.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Salman Malik,
Thank you.
international affairs expert, to have joined us. And I hope to get you back on board on the show, either in the studio or online, to talk more about foreign affairs, because the diplomacy or diplomatic endeavors made by different countries is getting more and more complex with every passing day, and we see results of that in what we are seeing in Palestine. Let's come to our last two stories very quickly. The first is the 16th anniversary of the martyrs of Karsar's tragedy. Today is the 16th anniversary of what happened in 2007 on this very day, when many of the people were martyred in Karsaz. We all remember that, and of course we all understand what is this. But before we go to, of course, and the fact is that Bilawal Bhutto Zardari also addressed an August ceremony and talked about this very thing, and he paid homage to the martyrs. I wanted to begin, in fact, with the Ababil weapon system that has been launched, but in fact I went to this. So of course the Pakistan has conducted a successful test flight of the Ababil weapon system, and of course this has been hailed across the country as a new chapter as far as Pakistan's defense capabilities, Pakistan's strategic capabilities are concerned. The test flight was aimed at revalidating various design, technical parameters and performance evaluation of different subsystems of this weapon system. The missile system is aimed at strengthening deterrence and enhancing strategic stability in the region through the operationalization of full spectrum deterrence in the overall construct of credible minimum deterrence. And of course Pakistan's defense is impregnable, and the way we have been moving forward as far as our defense capabilities are concerned is definitely laudable, if not for others, at least for Pakistan and Pakistanis. Finally, let's come to Twitter, and of course the fact that X, now that Twitter is known by this symbol, it has begun rolling out a $1 annual charge to new users in New Zealand and the Philippines, in a move that this service that is owned by Elon Musk wants to extend in the coming months and the years. The Fortune, the newspaper and the magazine first reported the subscription plan, which cost $1 a year for access to key functions including tweeting, replying, retweeting and liking. Also, after this report came out in Fortune, X or Twitter then revealed more details as far as this is concerned. As of October 17, 2023, they said, we are starting testing Not a Bot, which is a new subscription method for new users in the two countries. What I see is that they are going to extend this to other countries. As we say, as is a very important quote, nothing is life in free. So I think all these social media platforms like X or maybe Facebook or Meta in the future will be asking for a small subscription fee, but nevertheless a subscription fee for all the users that are using the platform. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to an end of today's newsroom. See you inshallah tomorrow with new story segments that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. Stay safe. Allah Hafiz.